Yeah, so thank you very much, Aripala. It's really lovely to come here at last. I've heard a lot about this place, and it's very nice to be at your beautiful centre. And I seem to know quite a few people here already, or I've met them over time. I did a fantastic yoga course with Sadhata 10 years ago in Spain. Had a lovely couple of days with Max and Greta near Tarragona. That was a very nice way to come out retreat. And being in the community with the Diampti, who I'm getting to know, and Arya Palo, really lovely. And I have to say, I mean, it's easy to take people for granted, but you've got a really good crew here in Barcelona. I have to say, in terms of people that are involved in this place, like really good people. Yeah, and thank you very much, Arya Pala. Not to embarrass you, but Arya Pala is one of these people that I would say, has fundamentally changed my life. Yeah, guaranteed. I was thinking about that. That's just true. Very, you're kind of low key dude, but very, very competent and courageous, I would say. Yeah, genuinely. I won't tell anyway, but yeah. I'll leave that. Yeah, so I thought I'd wanted to say something about faith in Buddhism, because I guess it's a kind of misunderstood, or it's not a very well understood area of Buddhism. People in the West sometimes like Buddhism because maybe they come from a kind of humanist, secular background, and you can kind of neatly square all these things together. But there's faith. What we translate as faith is very important in Buddhism. But I want to talk about it because there's so many misunderstandings from our previous traditions, you might say, or understanding the word faith. That I think it's important. There's a couple of words that have come into the West that I think everyone's familiar with. Yeah, one of them is Buddha. Yeah, we don't know what the Buddha is, but we know the word. Yeah, and karma. People say karma. So, and there's another word. There's a few words, but this word Shraddha, yeah, which gets translated as faith. Some similarities because it does involve emotion, but it's much more nuanced, and it's also it's actually, if you want to be a Buddhist or practice Buddhism, this word Shraddha is critical. Yeah. So I thought I'd look at what faith in Buddhism is not, and then look at what it is, and then if it's something that we do want to cultivate, then how do we go about that, or how do we engage with that? So before that, I thought a couple of points is around our kind of struggles or views of this word faith, probably based on the culture that, at least now, the culture that we come from. We live in a kind of pseudo-scientific culture, most of us, scientism. So it's not real. We have a real scientist, like Max is an actual scientist, which is like different from what most people think science is. They're like, oh, if you can't see it, you can't touch it, it can't be real. It's a load of mumbo jumbo. The mind is like completely untested. It's just a reactive. It's a kind of emotional response. So we live in a strange culture which has all sorts of views about what's real and what's not real, especially to the consciousness. And we also live in a funny, but it's also like highly subjective culture as well, where it's all about my feelings. So my feelings rule. And so it's very difficult. So you can just discount whole swathes and concepts, and we have a difficult understanding of faith. I think so it's in that area. If we can't see it or can't touch it, it's kind of not the real world. Yeah, which is our kind of attitude towards the most important area of our life, which is our consciousness. Essentially, that is our life. Yeah, so that's all we have basically. We have our consciousness, and that's really important, isn't it? But anyway, I had a very interesting conversation with Max by the beach. Fantastic beach, very nice. But it was kind of like one of these conversations that it's weird. We were just talking about the bedrock of material reality, yeah, as you do. But that's kind of Max's. He was studying all this, like quantum physics. Sounds very good. It's very new age, or quantum energy, quantum whatever. But I just wanted to know, because I'd heard about this stuff about material existence not being what we think it is at all, 30 years ago at least. And I still refuse to believe it, even through Buddhism, or even through everything. It's like, that must have been a niche, even though I've read it in scientific journals, it must be a kind of, it can't be true, because if it was true, the whole world must have changed by now, where Max had to explain like 6 times with me saying, no, but is it true? It's like, yeah, it's true. The whole idea of, base of material existence. Things exist in a kind of potentiality, and it will is it a whole atom or whatever, it will change its shape depending on whether it's observed or not, put it that way. Yeah, so it will exist in the potentiality. It's not anything, it's not matter, it doesn't exist in any fixed form. Someone observes it and it chunks down or whatever into, it becomes solid matter. Yeah, this blew my mind to the point I just couldn't believe it. Yeah, I just refused to believe it. So it's a bit of an eye-opener. So mind and matter, it's not just some, I mean, no disrespect if you're a new agey type, but it's not some new agey like, oh yeah, mind and, it's actually the foundation. Yeah. So thank you, Max. I'm sure you can talk to him about it. I don't know what, I don't even know what I just said. Yeah. I don't know what I just said, but he knows what I should have said. So you can talk to him. Yeah. So that's one thing. Another point before talking about Shraddha is we all live lives of faith, whether we know it or not. Yeah, our whole life is basically one of faith. Just before carrying on, most of the good ideas I got from a book called Know Your Mind by Sangharakshita, who founded this particular tradition. So all the genius stuff comes from him. Yeah, but I'm just here to relay it. But you're basically saying, yeah, we live lives of faith anyway. Yeah, our whole life, everything we do is based on. We think we live lives of knowledge. Yeah, like we know what's going to happen. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. Yeah, it's all. I could have had a heart attack coming here this morning. It's very feasible. Yeah, I could have. We nearly saw a young woman have a very different life just by stopping her bike without looking behind her. But she was going to her work today, probably, or to see her friend, with knowledge. Like she didn't think, oh, I might not get there, or, you know, it's all in faith. You think, oh, the transport that took us all here today, that wasn't guaranteed. You know, cars break down, trains don't come. So, but we assume that things are going to work, you know, and that goes into other areas of our life. We have faith in, like, maybe our new lover is going to be like, solve everything. Yeah, we're going to have faith in this, or we're going to have the new career, and that we've got faith that this is going to solve all our problems. Or we're going to get all the money. We have faith, and we're not going to have any feeling of insecurity in our life anymore. Yeah. So we live lives of faith, and basically the Buddha's kind of saying, well, that's what you're doing anyway. You may as well have faith in something that is actually going to work. Yeah. At least that's the claim of Buddhism. Okay. So what faith is not in Buddhism? Kind of the same thing from two angles, I guess, but it's not blind belief. Yeah. It's not. You're not asked to believe in Buddhism in that way. Yeah, so it's not. Well, I mean, how to say this? Yeah, so different. I guess different religious traditions have different views on this. And I was baptized, and apparently I was baptized, and I was a Christian. I'm not a Christian. I never was. But it's like I went through a ritual which made me Christian. I have a cousin who, without going into his exciting story, became a Muslim in jail. Yeah, he took a Shahada, and he's a Muslim for life. There's apostasy law, so that's it. So he did a ritual. He's a Muslim now, and that's it. Yeah, there's no such thing in Buddhism. It's not. You can't be born a Buddhist. Yeah, you can't do a ritual to become a Buddhist. Yeah, you're practicing Buddhism, and then like in our tradition, you will have some significant rituals. You become a mitra, which means friend, or you become like an order member, which is a further level of commitment, and it just signifies something. But there's no ritual which makes you a Buddhist. Yeah. So faith in Buddhism is you don't join a faith. Yeah. You can't. It's not that kind of thing, which in a way makes Buddhism more difficult to propagate and spread. Yeah. Because you can't just do that. You can't be on the street and then say these words. I love the Buddha, and then, okay, you're Buddhist. You can't do that. Yeah. So it's not like that. It's not blind belief in the sense of you have to believe the Buddha. In fact, the Buddha was explicit in saying, don't do that, please. Yeah, test it in your own experience. Here's my teachings. Try it, which means really try it. Doesn't mean read a book and then meditate for a few months and be out of rubbish. It means like actually try it. And if you feel like it's true and it's opening something, then maybe you can be a disciple at that point. You can kind of follow the teachings, you know. But it's like you have to test it. He said classically, like a goldsmith tests gold. Yeah, to see if it works, if it's kosher. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, and faith is not also, you get in other circles. I don't know if did anyone see that thing, The Secret, about 15 years ago, or like it was a book called The Secret. Yeah, it was like quite amazing. I mean, in some respects, it had some interesting things, but it's basically saying if you believe enough, anything's possible. Yeah, it's like a kind of slightly American pyramid scheme, the spirituality, where if you really believed you were going to be a millionaire in a week, you would be. So you just don't believe enough, but hire me and I'll help you believe. And it was kind of wild. So it's not that. Yeah. So what is faith in Buddhism? Faith is, this word Shraddha gets translated as faith because faith we understand as something that moves the heart, which is really important. If your heart's not in something, you won't make any progress with it at all. You might be a good idea, but if your heart's not really in it, it's not going to make any difference. So faith is important on that level. It gets also translated as confidence, confidence, trust in the Buddha, in the Dharma. And confidence is an interesting word because apparently, well, con and then feed is something to do with, I think it directly means with trust. So you take it in your own experience, you try it, you trust it, so far so good, and you keep going like that. Sometimes there's a bridge where you're like, I don't think this works at all. I've been doing this for 20 years and I don't seem to have changed at all. And then you're like, oh no, I have. So it's like you get blank spots, but it's a generally fairly progressive in the sense that you try it, it works, and you keep going. But faith is, the faith is actually quite difficult to talk about in a certain sense because it's more mysterious. It is to do with the movements of your heart, which by definition makes it more difficult to talk about. It's not utilitarian in that sense. It's not something you can just understand. You can't just read a blurb, a little kind of thing on faith and go, oh, faith in Buddhism, I got it, Like you probably haven't been none the wiser after this talk what faith is in a certain sense. It's a lot less clear, And it works on different levels. I think, well, I've heard it spoken about as faith of your head, heart, and legs. So you study Buddhism, you study the Dharma with your brain. You study it with people, and you're like, oh, this makes sense, or not. But in my case, yes, this makes sense intellectually. Say, take karma. If I was a horrible, nasty person deliberately, non-stop for a month to everyone, I wonder what my life would look like. Probably terrible. And if I tried the opposite, so maybe it's going in. So there's a directionality to our actions. You can test that in your experience. You can put all your effort behind it and say, I'm going to be super nice to people. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to be understanding, and really gear into that with some oomph. And maybe in a few weeks, you can see if your mind has changed a bit, if your life has changed. Or you can do the opposite direction, which I wouldn't recommend, and test it that way. So it's testable. So faith is like you can read something about what the Buddha's saying, or maybe it's to do with what he calls conditioned co-production, the fact that there is no, talking about non-fixity, there's nothing fixed in the universe. It's a constant flux and process of coming into existence and coming out of existence. And we do this weird thing, unfortunately for us, where we just compact ourselves into a fixed self and suffer and make other people suffer. So we're blind to that, but you can read that, and with your brain, you can be like, actually, And maybe even modern science has some way of talking about like systems theory. You have all these different conditions that affect something. So you can think, that's one level, you can be convinced intellectually. It is possible to be convinced intellectually, and that's why I think this tradition is so, it takes study is important. You need to know what you're getting into, and you need to know whether you agree or not. Because if that part's missing, the rest of it won't follow. So it's like, oh, this makes sense. Maybe there needs a bit of translation, but it makes sense. So you have the faith of the head, but that's definitely not enough. It's like you won't. Many people. I've met many people. I would say that are kind of convinced of Buddhism, intelligent people, but their heart's not in it. And it's quite difficult. We live in a kind of anti-faith culture. Like I say, a kind of pseudo-scientism, a very hardcore materialist culture, which makes it quite difficult. So people feel a bit awkward or a bit silly, and it's like somehow we have to get our emotions into it. Otherwise, it's not pointless, but it's almost pointless. Yeah, to be able to put your heart into it. I mean, it's otherwise you basically end up with conventional religion. Yeah, and I'm not knocking that. Maybe that's nice. You get some kind of comfort and you meet some nice people. But basically, you just kind of have some nice tea, and what can end up happening is you end up with a place like this or in Berlin where it becomes a kind of nice kind of religious vibe for atheistic, cynical, secular people, but they get a little sprinkle of religion and they have nice tea and it's social and meditation's a bit pleasurable and it's not going anywhere. Yeah. So in a certain sense, faith is it is somehow to get in this business of Shraddha, to put one's heart into it, is what turns it from being a generally pleasant group to something that can transform your life. Yeah. So yeah, because at the end of the day, I actually had an interesting, good conversation with Aryapala last night. I asked him if he had any ideas for my talk, and he did, so that was helpful. But you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I think more or less everybody basically lives their life based on what their heart's doing. Yeah, we're kind of, we think we're rational people. We're not really, are we? I mean, I don't think I've made any rational decisions in my life, like big ones. You know, like it's more like your heart's like, I'm leaving this country and I'm going to this country, and you can have all the excuses, but there's something in your heart that's taking you there, and so again, yeah, it's to do with the vision. We're sort of visionary creatures in a certain sense. Yeah, we vision ourselves into the future, don't we? It's like, again, maybe you got this kind of idea of this perfect lover, you're holding hands, and it's like sunset. Oh, perfect, yeah, amazing. I'm going there. Or yeah, if I had all the money, yeah, I'd be like, my body would be relaxed. I'd be chill. I often used to still do think that. Or like I just go backpacking and then I'll be completely free forever. There's something in these things, but maybe they're pointing to something else as well. And important point, which has really struck me recently, is faith has nothing to do with pleasure. Yeah, which is an interesting thing in Buddhism, at least. Faith has nothing really to do with pleasure. So you might enjoy meditating, yeah. You might enjoy studying. You might enjoy coming to a place like this because it is pleasurable. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. But faith is something else. And I think faith, you sometimes classically find it when you're having a really difficult time, what you call on, yeah, what you actually believe, when you're squashed into a corner or something's going really sideways. That's in its most negative form. That's when you really find out what you actually believe. Yeah? Maybe you're a Buddhist on paper, but you're like, actually, I don't believe this. Or you do. Yeah. So you have moments where you catch yourself like, oh, you understand that faith is a lot more important than pleasure in a certain sense. And it's in Buddhism, it's the next step out of the wheel of suffering. You've got the wheel of life out there. Our usual response, especially to pain, is just to immediately grab for pleasure. Yeah, we all do it. We're all doing this. And same with pleasure. Your immediate response to pleasure is to grab for more pleasure. Yeah. And faith is a strange, like Sangharaj makes the point, it's a very particular mental state. It's a very particular thing. It's not vague. There's something that happens where you get hit with some discomfort and some pain, and something else happens where you don't just react and try and grab something. It's like, oh, there's a deeper current in reality. There's a deeper meaning to my life. And I could actually change, or something could change at a fundamental level, which makes you behave differently. Yeah. So it's an important point because sometimes these two things can seem the same. Yeah. You could be coming along for 10 years thinking you're full of faith, but perhaps not. Yeah. Maybe you are, but perhaps not. Yeah. And it's not even a given for a card carrying Buddhist like me. You know, it's like you don't know what you're made of until you're kind of tested and you go, oh, I do have faith, or I don't have faith, or it's somewhere. So it's also, yeah, so it's a felt sense in a way. It's a felt sense of the limitations of living a life based purely on pleasure. Yeah. Buddhism, what I like about Buddhism, has got no problem with pleasure. Yeah, it's like pleasure's great, no problem. It will just tell you the limitations of it, anyway, maybe I won't go into that, but I did have some reflections of what I would be like as a human being if I just lived my life like that. And I ended up with someone like Colonel Gaddafi. I was just like, just this corrupted, I mean, I was like, pleasure monster. Anyway, I'm not going to that. Let's not talk about me. So in a way, having, Sangha actually makes the point, having faith in the Buddha is actually having faith in yourself, which is quite interesting. And he even reverses it. In order to have faith in the Buddha, you have to have faith in yourself. Because in a way, the Buddha represents, well, not doesn't represent, what is, you could say, human potentiality, reached. And also the Buddha's, so it comes back to us. You can have faith in yourself that you're moving that in that direction. And it's a deeply unfashionable view at the moment. It also gives you faith in humanity. Most of us don't have much faith in humanity. It's like an old-fashioned idea, perhaps. But yeah, it gives you faith in humanity as a fulfillment of humanity. A Buddhist would say that's the Buddha. So faith has elements of insight in it. It's you get, in a way, faith, you have a flash. Sometimes, I don't know if you've had that in your life, probably, I'm sure you have a flash of something more. And normally the tragedy of our life is we just bury that under a load of iPhone distractions and pressure life gets on top of you. But you have a flash of something much bigger than just like this narrow bandwidth that we live on, paying bills, politics. Oh my God, just going through life. And I've had a number of friends work in hospices with people dying, and that was one of the things that shocked me into doing something about my life, because I felt like we could just do this, have a mono life. You just go along, you do all the right things. You're good person, even a good Buddhist. Just go along, being nice, civilized, sensible. And then right at the end, when you've got 2 weeks left, perhaps, or a week, the whole thing opens, and you're just like, wow, there was a whole life I missed. Of important things. And in a way, that's what faith is in Buddhism. You see that, and you do something about that, before it's too late. So how, if it is that important, how do you engage with these things? I think one thing is, again, we were talking about it last night, is what are you really into already? What are you really obsessed about? Because there'll be a seed of something there. Even something ridiculous like trainers. You might be like really like into, you look at these Nike, they're not stupid. Nike is the goddess of victory. There's something archetypal about it. All their posters, they look like gods and goddesses. There's a kind of whole thing which communicates, there may be some sense of like, on the most base materialist consumerist level, maybe there's some, which actually, that's what we want, some freedom, some power, some like more extra. And if you buy them, they're expensive, but you'll get some of that on you. Anyway, I shouldn't talk personally, but there's all sorts of, maybe people into comics, people into certain books, films, hobbies. There's something in there that's already taking you beyond itself. It's like a kind of gateway to something beyond itself. Your passion in life, your job, whatever it is, there's something that is taking you out of yourself. So it's always a good place to start. Images, Buddha images are important. I was in a center in West London, really amazing people, but I think this Indonesian doctor donated a Buddha out of marble that someone had probably stolen from some ancient temple, but he felt a bit bad about it and gave it to us. And it was like this big, and it did look like a garden gnome. It had and it just did. And it killed me. I was like, I couldn't do it. Anyway, but then I went to Padmaloka, and there's this amazing Buddha, or Buddha images, and I was like, it had a huge effect on me. Had a huge effect on me. So finding images is important, actually, whatever they are. Mantra, which is not singing, like kind of directed energy, that can really, because it's not logical. You're not sitting there thinking, what does mantra mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's a sound symbol for a Buddha, for qualities, whatever. It disengages this kind of over-rational, cynical, so mantra's good. reading about the life of the Buddha. Yeah, if you get a good book, not a terrible one, but if you get some appalling ones. But I recently read a really good book called Warrior of Peace that was written by a friend of mine who died 10 years ago, and it blew me away. It was so inspiring. Yeah, nuanced, all these qualities, easy read. I thought, yeah, that gave me some faith. It just you get bombarded with all kind of world views at the moment, especially with our stupid phones. Yeah, we're just getting constantly bombarded with other people's views, who generally want money from us or want our attention. And it's so good to just read something that gives you something uplifting and something noble to move towards. Yeah, that you think, oh, this is legit. So that's super helpful. One of the problems we have with faith, I think, is we don't know who the Buddha is. I don't know who the Buddha is, but most of us really don't know who the Buddha is. And we have all sorts of like weird views about the Buddha. Yeah, distorted visions, like he's some super meek, mild, nice, be nice to animals, like floating around in an orange robe somewhere in India, like, and we're like, oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that, but nothing's moving to that. You're just like, oh, great, yeah, see you later. Yeah. Or he's like a bit of a party pooper. I don't know if you know that. He kills everyone's joy. He just comes in and he's like, drinking and taking drugs. He's like disappointed in us. Like, and yeah. So we have him. He's like, oh no, I don't want to go towards him. So we hide the Buddha. Or in Berlin, it's like, I think some people have a bizarre idea of the Buddha being like some cool, like hippie guys in the party. He's like, hey, everything's one, spliff, it's fine. Just, oh, you take drugs, oh, it's all good. He's like one of the cool guy, tantric. Yeah, not particularly inspiring. Yeah, maybe accessible, but you're not going to move towards that for your whole life. Or we think he's some dusty figure from a book, or just weak. Frankly, that was my impression of. When I first came to Buddhist Center, I just thought, yeah, I met some actual real human beings that I thought were interesting people, because I just thought Buddhism looked rubbish. I just thought I don't ever want to be associated with these people. They just look weak. They look like lifeless, weak people. I don't want to be involved with this. So there were all these weird views. Where did I get that from? I just sort of had this funny view about it. So none of them are the Buddha. Yeah, I can categorically tell you that, because I have actually studied some suttas, and that is not the Buddha. He's a completely different character. Yeah, extraordinary character, and real energy. Which is why study is another thing. Study is good. One way to help with faith, I think, is to know the differences as well. Yeah, because sometimes we have this extraordinary thing in modern life, this bizarre thing you hear where people just say, oh yeah, all religions are the same. And even religious people try and style it like that, like all religions are the same, and they are definitely not. Yeah, and frankly, any religious person from a different faith that I've ever met will tell you they're not. Yeah, it's like, I don't know why we say this. I think partially it's because people say this because, in a way, they don't want to stand out from the crowd. So my crowd, and maybe our crowd, is generally people I know, like 99% liberal, left-wing people. They're my people. They're my kind of general group. But one of the prime kind of values within that group is tolerance. Yeah, almost sometimes to the point of, like this, scrubbing out differences. Like, people aren't different, we're all the same. But it's such an insult. Yeah, it's like telling someone they don't believe what they believe. Yeah, like, oh yeah, all the religions are the same. It's like, actually, it's not my experience, and I'm a religious person. Yeah, so it's like, you can kind of try and dominate or try and tell someone what their life is like. Anyway, I'm going on one here, but I actually thought it was quite intolerant, frankly, and oppressive. Because you're kind of denying someone's individuality. You're denying what they believe as a person in their whole life. My whole life, my cousin tried it. Yeah, my cousin tried it. He came out of jail. He was like in his jihadist mode. Yeah, it was a disaster. He's not anymore, thankfully, smoking again and eating all kind of haram food. Yeah, so it's good. But he tried it. He tried it with me. He was just like, yeah, he was a bit disassociated or something. He was just like, yeah, so the Buddha was an early prophet, and so it's all the same. I was like, okay, what? So he's like trying to bring me in by telling me that the Buddha was actually Allah sent the Buddha in India, and I was like, mate, just it's fine. You do you, I do me. We're nice. I love him to pieces, but it was a weird kind. Anyway, I'm going on enough. Um, enough of this. Yeah, so it's fine. Buddhism is different, and that gives you faith because sometimes people. It's important to know these. It's important to know what the differences are. They are very different in terms of path and goal. They're different. Where there's overlap, just to end my little rant here, I think where there's overlap, I think is in maybe what you call mystics. Yeah, the problem that I think other, maybe Abrahamic religions have had in the past, definitely in Islam and Christianity, is a kind of persecution of mystics, yeah, of heretics. Whereas Buddhism, for some reason, well, probably because it is a bit different, it just doesn't do that. It doesn't persecute its mystics. It kind of elevates them. Yeah, so I would say that is, but still, in every tradition, of course, you have all the same stuff. I should just be quiet. Never mind. Good. Yes. So to wrap it up, I think faith in Buddhism or faith in the Buddha does actually, on one hand, mean faith in yourself. Fundamentally, you do actually need the confidence to actually try and test it, and also have a sense that you can actually change. Yeah. So you have faith in yourself, you have faith in the Buddha, and also you can have a sense in a way that the Buddha had faith in you, because after the Buddha attained enlightenment, there was no I don't know about it wasn't clear, maybe, but mythologically, he thinks to himself, is there any point trying to communicate to these people? People are so dense and so kind of fixated and aggressive and locked into their views. This is going to be a nightmare, yeah? But apparently this God came along and said, no, Buddha, come on, and the Buddha goes, all right. And then he has this vision of us, essentially, which I think is such a beautiful view of humanity as a pool of lotuses. It's like a key image in Buddhism about humanity, which is so profoundly positive. And some of the lotuses were down in the mud, like a little bud, like me sometimes. That's how I feel. And some of them are coming near the surface. Sometimes you might feel like that, and some of them are breaking out of the pool. But so it is possible to communicate. And I think the Buddha's view, obviously, of humanity is like, yeah, you can move towards liberation. No one's stuck. You don't have to go through some kind of process of being stuck somewhere forever. Yeah. And I think this last point that I just came to mind when I was on the solitary, after periods, I would say, of like severe anxiety, existential anxiety, which was horrible, which sometimes happens on solitary. You're alone, you've got no phone. I put my watch away. You've got nothing. You don't see humans, and you're just like, it's your mind, and that's it. Yeah. And actually, it's the Buddha's main point is the problem with the reason so many of us are so insecure, not just now, but throughout history, is this world can offer you no security. It cannot. It's not in its nature. It's not evil. It just can't offer you any lasting security. And so the Buddha is saying basically the only security you will find is in a consciousness that has transformed itself out of a kind of duality. Maybe even relates to like baseline of. That's why I found my conversation with Max so helpful in a certain sense. It's like the baseline of reality is not fixed into kind of dualities. If you really dig down, it's very it's almost, well, like the enlightenment in a certain sense is discontinuous with what we're experiencing right now. Right now we're on one bandwidth of consciousness, and it is possible in your own life to expand. People try, you can do it with psychoactive substances, but I think Buddhism is taking that to a whole nother level where the answer to your insecurity cannot be found on this level. I'm not saying this that in a sense of like, oh, just don't worry about things that it make you insecure. Like, we need somewhere to live, we need food, we need companions and friends and all of this. I'm just saying that in itself can't offer real security. And basically the Buddha is saying it's a transformation of consciousness which steps out of this kind of hard duality, and that hard duality creates fear. Anyway, so I think the only thing that I was thinking is just take a risk, isn't it? Yeah, take a risk with your life, because it's a point that Sangharakshita makes is a lot of times we can be so risk averse and so sensible that you basically just die a long, slow death trying to be safe. You know, so it's like it completely backfires. Like, let me just be safe with my life. Let me just be risk free. Oh, it's time up. Yeah, and I think that that's exemplified in the Buddha's own life. In terms of taking risks, the right calculated risk, the right kind of risk, by taking risks. I'll leave it there. Thanks.